John Varughese is the Senior Vice President of Dunkin Brand and Head of International. He overlooks 70 markets for Dunkin Donuts and Baskin Robbins, from India to Africa to the Middle East and Europe. In our conversation today, we're going to be talking about the crisis, how Dunkin handled the crisis, the customer behavior, and the future of franchising. This channel is for entrepreneurs and business executives. We share insights, tips, ideas, interviews to help you become better leaders. So if you're new to this channel, consider subscribing in the link below. Let's get to the interview. Hello, John. I'm so happy to have you. We've known each other for a very long time since I'm the franchisee of Dunkin in Lebanon. And I'm super excited to hear about Dunkin through the crisis, all the insights, since you're overlooking 70 markets of Dunkin and Baskin Robbins. So the way our conversation is going to go, we're going to start with the crisis in general, insights from the crisis, the new consumer behavior. Everybody's talking about this famous new normal. And then we'll talk about the future of franchising. Ready?
Sure, absolutely. Absolute pleasure, Christine, as always, talking to you and spending time with you. Really looking forward to this. I'm sure it will be very exciting. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for saying yes. So let's do it. So let's start with the crisis, John. This tiny virus really placed the world upside down, and I know that all the markets that you're overlooking were affected. What are the main learning of this crisis, since we're at the end of, let's say, part one of the COVID-19 crisis?
It's been a long journey. I mean, the world has been taken by complete surprise with this, and nobody expected it to get so bad. So it will be wrong to say anybody was prepared. Nobody was prepared for it. But good organizations tend to adapt very quickly. So one of the main things we learned was, don't be a victim. Because it's very easy to say it's outside my control, this happened, that happened. We very quickly called our teams, put a crisis force in place, but very soon the name of the team also was changed from crisis force to COVID management and the future, because otherwise we are always negative, finding ways to justify why things will not happen. And after 2 weeks, I remember very clearly, we said, we are not going to look and cry about what is not going to happen. We are going to see how we can influence the future and see what we can do about it, rather than being pessimistic and negative about it. So one is, we learn from the crisis very soon that we have to shape our own future. We have to direct the way things are going to happen. We realize that a consumer is going to be different. His behaviors are going to change, and we have to adapt quickly. We really have to find ways and means to engage him in the way he's going to consume under the new set of circumstances, rather than we sitting back and relaxing and saying, let me see what's going to happen. We really track them closely to see how their behavior is changing, and we try to be on their consumer path, on the way they are consuming goods, or even when they are at home, how can we engage with them, what can we do? So we call it our new consumer reality campaigns, to be more relevant to them, to make them understand them more than anything else, and then direct our communication. So we have learned a lot along the way. We also learned the fact that having a lean, mean organization is very useful, because if you have a huge hierarchy, you won't communicate that often. So having a lean organization is good, so that we go direct. Having communication with all stakeholders, with our employees, with the franchisees, and with the consumers in some form, was very important, because we had to constantly gauge the pulse. It also told us that all your long-term plans is out of the window. Learn to live today, and if you live today, you can see a better tomorrow. So that's what we kind of, in a nutshell, concluded as well. So it was a good grounding that, long-term plan is good, needed for sure. But when there is a crisis, you have to you have to come up with a revised plan that is relevant for the today. Otherwise, you won't survive to see tomorrow.
I love the turning a negative into a positive. This is the kind of mindset that we try to work on all the time. And did you see any opportunities in this crisis, like things that came because of the crisis that we didn't think about before?
Two things. I would put that into internal and external. Internal, when I look at us from a company point of view, and I would talk about that first, it just shows that we don't have to necessarily travel so much and use so much of traveling for, because of the nature of my job is 70 countries. Sometimes I have to travel 24 hours to attend a 6-hour meeting. And that is as far as I am concerned, but not only me, even my whole team, my immediate direct team, was the big question, do we really need to do that? Because if it is a 4-hour, 6-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour, whatever meeting, this crisis told us that technology will enable us to substitute some of the meetings. And I'm very careful when I say some. I would only say some, because it is never going to substitute in-person, one-on-one, seeing the customer, seeing the franchisee, understanding what's happening. It is never going to get substituted, and we will be fooling ourselves if we ever try that. But we also realize there are so many meetings that we really don't have to go. We save out on time. We save out on travel time. We make their time, our time more efficient. So we realize that we have to adjust. And one more thing internally we keep saying is, we will not get back to our old habits. Whatever it is, we will not get back. So we are consciously saying that every day, so that the muscle memory will come in and we will actually change things. Otherwise, it's so easy to get back into what we are doing. We are constantly telling everyone every day, don't do the same things as before. So that is the internal part of it. From an external part of it, we realized that we had started our delivery business. Delivery is there in the Middle East for quite some time, but we have not embraced it as much as we started that whole process of embracing it as one pillar of our strategy some 2 years back. So across the world, we invested in all markets on infrastructure on delivery. We also got all the aggregators. We had a summit of a kind for the first time ever in Dubai and in Malaysia. We had a summit, a delivery summit that focused only on delivery more than 15, 18 months back. So that kind of work really was useful, because that came into being practiced by many franchisees, and some, typical of all franchisees, some adapt it more quickly, some don't believe, but at the end of the day, everybody who believed really capitalized more. Everybody who did half also benefited, and anybody who did not do immediately moved, because we had the infrastructure, the campaigns, the learnings, and what to do, what not to do, and we gave all of that. And now nearly 100% of our markets do delivery, and that was one of the main reasons we survived as a company. The franchisee survived as a business, but more importantly, we became more relevant to the consumer, because what would have taken us maybe another 2-3 years to build awareness for a delivery, we got that awareness in no time, because the consumer was there looking for us, and we were there to capitalize, and that match happened very fast. Otherwise, the consumer behavior to shift takes a lot more time, as you know, but we managed to bridge the gap. So we see that this delivery business now, in many markets, more than 1/3 of our business comes from delivery, and that is huge. Okay, and we see, obviously, when people are not leaving homes, this number is going to be high. But when people come back, our real belief is that this number is going to be, may not be 1/3, but maybe 25%, at least 1/4 of it, of the total business coming from there. And we will get back our base business, or at least close to that. So incrementally, we will see a much better mix going forward, is our belief. And we are quite optimistic about it, because we'll also have to wait and see how the consumer behavior changes with time. But we are quite optimistic that the number that would have normally taken us 2 to 3 years to reach, we may reach by the end of the year on an ongoing, consistent basis. I'm discounting the numbers during the crisis, because during the crisis, circumstances were different. But we believe that come 2020 end and 2021, we'll be in a place where we will actually look back and say, my God, we made so much progress, which would have taken us 2-3 years to happen. So that is the positive side of it.
Actually, this is something I wanted to ask you about because obviously COVID was an accelerator for any industry and the online business. But on the delivery, what's your take on the aggregators, the cloud kitchen? Because now things are moving in different directions. Some brands have their own delivery platform, but there are some new ways of delivering as well. So I would love to have your take on the aggregators and the cloud kitchens. And the second question is on the products. Did you find a difference between some products that are more keen to be delivered than others? What's your insight on this as well?
I'll just add one more part to it in terms of our franchisees and the aggregators. Okay, I'll just talk a little bit about delivery and the franchisees. So during the crisis, what happened was, we all know there is a cost of doing delivery. You know, there is a cost. So when it is around 10, 20, 25, or as I said, up to 1/3, it is incremental business because the average check is nearly double of that in our store. You know, so to get 35% business of sales, we just need 17% of customers, we get 35% of sales. So we are not cannibalizing everybody. We are cannibalizing a small thing, but we're getting more. But when the mix went up to 70% during the crisis, then your weighted average, when you look at your gross margins, that comes down drastically. But the real good licensees understood it is never, this is not reality. This is just opportunity. Might as well capitalize, might as well build our awareness and give great service. Even if you're going to take a short-term hit, when you come out of it, our awareness and the fact that we are a trusted brand will come into play much more than normal. So that was the first part. So talking to our licensees and getting them on board and believing that this is a short-term phase, we have to go through this. So the licensees are not going slow. Oh no, I should not be doing this because it's going to affect me. So that was one. We won that, and our partners, all of them, thanks to all our partners, they've done a phenomenal job, and they continue to aggressively actually promote. In spite of having lower margins, they're actually continuing to promote to keep their business going because they've learned to see right beyond the crisis. They believe that there is something beyond the crisis. So they did that. From an aggregator's point of view, my philosophy has been very clear. You know, I know I've heard many stories that they are the ones who are taking away our margin. They are the ones who are doing this. But when you look at it very simply, they have a cost of doing business. The franchisee has a cost of doing business. The models are changing like before, not like before this changed. The consumer is the one getting the convenience. Okay. Now, the consumer is the one who's ultimately benefiting. So, which is great from that point of view, the consumer benefits. Now, unless and until the cost of doing this business is split in a manner equitably, okay, I would not say exact split percentages or anything. Overall, the cost has to be divided. No one or two stakeholders can take everything. Everybody has to take some hit because the consumer is willing to pay something more for convenience. So as long as we keep an eye on all and say, how can I equitably manage the cost, you are more likely to win. One. More importantly, don't look at the aggregator as an evil. It is not an enemy. He is actually providing you the
last mile.
Yeah, he is helping you reach a customer which you cannot or would not or could not reach with your own infrastructure. Imagine trying to reach all these customers on our own. Impossible. When you don't have money, are we trying to say, I'm going to put my own infrastructure to reach the last mile customer? Not possible. So look at them as a partner, absolute partner. Look at something that is a win-win for them. For us, what we have done successfully, that's why when you refer back to what I said, we had a delivery summit. We called them and said, what does success mean for you? And then what does success mean for me? We told them our need, and I've understood from them what is your need. So we actually, there are markets where we actually set goals and targets for them. I said, if you meet, forget giving less commission. We even went in 2 markets. I will not say all markets, 2 markets. We actually said, if you reach this much number, we will give you 1% more. More. Okay. But at the end of the day, it is not about percentages. It's about the amount of dollars you take to your bank. And that happens when you get volumes. And the aggregators then promote you. The aggregators give back so much of information, so much of quality information that I would have never got. They have instances where in Australia, they came and told us, if you keep your shops open from 11 in the night till 1, in these geographies, we will direct our sweet traffic, people who ask for sweets, direct to your store. We did it. They even told us saying, we're getting a lot of inquiries for sweet treats in these geography. There is nobody there, you're also not there. If you want to open, you will get business. So I'm just giving one or two examples of how when we partner with the aggregators, when we work with the aggregators, look at it very objectively, that they are there for a reason and there is a cost of doing business. We are there for a reason, there is a cost of doing business. The consumer wants the benefit. If we look at that way and very objectively, rather than getting emotional and that certainly I was making 80%, 70% gross margin, that is gone. Look at the incremental part of it is one. Secondly, the consumer is there, whether you like it or not. You have to find a way to make it work. So we realized very soon, because the ticket values are double or even triple in many cases when it comes to Baskin, more than Dunkin. Dunkin also, the ticket values are double. That this is a very good business. With 5-10% of customers, I can get 20-25% of sales. So it was the how you position it that was so important, and we got all our aggregators on board. We philosophies have a good relationship with them. Win-win. What the customer has to win, the aggregator has to win, and the franchisee has to win. Then the brand wins. Otherwise, if one of the stakeholders lose, we are not going to make it.
So moving forward, do you feel that the whole model is changing? So having less retail stores, more delivery, more cloud kitchens. How do you see the model as a whole? Because I absolutely agree that the aggregators are actually tech, and it's a tech company more than anything else. It's a logistics, and the more we can use the information, the better it is for everyone. But do you see that having aggregators and cloud kitchen and COVID accelerating all this is changing our business model as a whole?
I wouldn't say it is changing completely, because one of the main things on delivery also is speed. We have seen, and the big guys who are the big brands that do delivery, and we have also got a few good people on board that will specialize in delivery. What we have seen, what we have heard from them, and what we did we did a consumer research focus only on delivery to understand consumer behavior and how they react. Speed and time of fulfillment is an absolute critical factor in building frequency and loyalty. Because whether you need it in 30 minutes or whether you need it after 1 hour, consumer always likes it when he gets it in roughly 30 odd minutes. Okay, I'm not saying that is a correct number, but when he gets it very fast. So if you have just 6 outlets, 8 outlets, or just giving an example, versus having 20 outlets in a geography, you will be able to actually fulfill your demand much better now. Okay, so because you will have many more touch points to reach your end consumer very soon. Now, do you need your complete experiential stores in all 20, or whether you need 5 to 8 experiential stores that talk of who you are, what is the experience, and what to expect in a Baskin or a Dunkin? May not be. You don't need all 20. You need a few to stand and represent what your image is, to represent what your brand is, to represent how we do business, to talk about the experience and what we're all about. But take that aside, and then comes the convenience angle, because the consumer is now demanding convenience day in and day out. For that convenience, we may have smaller version of stores. So it's not the same capex, it's not the same rents. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the prime time, facing street that you pay a premium to get, even if it is a secondary location. But if your objective is very clear that this is more of a distribution point to meet my delivery goal, and I will have something going on, not to say that you're opening only delivery locations, but I will have retail business, but one of the fundamental reasons is to also get and make it easier to reach certain pockets which I could not have reached. So the model and the approach may change. The pods or the points of distribution may not necessarily change. And in addition to what we do, we also have to capitalize on what the aggregators are doing in terms of dark kitchens and so on and so forth. But the difference is that dark kitchens, you cannot give the entire menu. You give a very limited menu to meet a very functional need of a sweet treat, whether it's a donut or ice cream, or a caffeine related need, which is coffee or whatever it is. But we can have small shops that still delivers everything that a shop can give, but at a much lower cost. So it's about adapting. And I think our development, that's why, if you remember what I said at the beginning, work with the aggregators. They will give you a lot of insight on what you should do, where you should do, and how you should go about. And as a brand, then you know to what extent am I going to dilute the small version from the big experiential shop, because anyway, very few people are coming to the shop, but it's all about how I give the same experience back home. Try to replicate that to the extent possible.
So a good mix of large stores for the experience, for the brand building, and smaller stores for convenience. And this is a good switch to the consumer behavior, consumer insights. And I would love to have your take, since you're overlooking 70 markets from India to Africa to Europe and the Middle East. And do you see differences, differences in customer behavior during and post-COVID? And did you find differences through geographies, or is it a global consumer that is adapting and that is changing?
Interesting. I think it's a very good question. It's a very broad one. But one thing across the world that we saw very clearly, there is an anxiety phase where everybody panicked, that the world is coming to an end, and which is normal across the world. When this happened, governments panicked, consumers panicked, brands panicked, everybody panicked. So it was an anxiety phase. So one has to go to that. And then you move from the anxiety phase to, as I call it, an acceptance phase. That fine, I have to live with it, I have to move on with it. And then really comes the adjusting phase, where you adjusted and say, I'm going to now manage my business, my whatever it is, in this manner. This is not going to go away soon. Okay. So we are actually, in our mind, we are in that adjusting phase now, where we have accepted and we have adjusted ourselves to let this COVID be a part of our lives for the immediate future, because there is no end game. There is no date that we are working on. So that, to me, is, I have seen it consistent across the world. That is human psychology and human behavior that all go through, and every market goes through the different phases, but timing could be different, but all have gone through this phase. As I see, the majority part of the world is now in this adjusting phase, where they are really trying to drive the future and to really try to take it into the future. Now, that is from an overall point of view. Did I see any differences? Obviously, again, primary difference was not because of there was any fundamental difference, but the primary difference was because of time. It's because of different, because things change. You have a lockdown, then you don't have a lockdown, then you have another lockdown, then you have a geography that is, one geography is closed, other is not, and then people want to do something different. So, and the governments change, not because they did anything wrong. The effects and the consequences of this were so dynamic in nature that everybody had to move really fast. So decisions you took on one day changes the next day, and then you again change it the third day. So it's about the dynamism. So what I saw was some countries obviously did better than the others. Some countries, as a country, not as a brand, I'm saying. And this, many a times, the success we are seeing in certain countries is to a very large extent because how the country has handled this pandemic. Some countries handle better. I'm not getting into which country handled better than the other. And the countries that handled it better have always done well. So that is the difference. But from a consumer point of view, everybody's kind of behaved the same way. Just to give one example, just to drive home the point. Everybody sitting at home, everybody is sitting in this doom and gloom, as I call it, kind of, not worried. And when they came into this acceptance phase, sitting at home, okay, even before the adjustment phase, when they came to the acceptance phase, they said, okay, fine, let me now start indulging. Let me now start celebrating, a little bit. Celebrating the fact that I'm safe, not celebrating anything, big. And we saw our sweet treats, whether it is Baskin or Dunkin, both sales went through the roof during this time, because people now felt this is my small indulgence. This is the cheapest form of, or somebody also said the cheapest form of entertainment for a family of four. 4 scoops of ice cream or 4 donuts or a coffee here and there. So we realized our role. we said that, and people were wanting some way to get out of it. You just can't sit at home and just think negative. So this little bit of sweet treats was a good avenue to break their mindset, make them feel good, make them, feel nice about that day or that moment. And we also encourage people to start gifting. If you see somebody is going through a real difficult time, just send a small, through the aggregator, send a small ice cream box or a box of 12 donuts or 6 donuts and say, have a good day. And we saw that people got into that, became spiraled into such a good thing across the world. Okay, many markets, people are just reaching out to others and just sharing and giving, just like that. It doesn't cost much, for a few dollars here and there, you can send a surprise to your friend. But what it did was that also went viral. Then they started doing the same to the others and so on and so forth. But what I'm really getting at is people needed some place to vent and get out this whole thing. And our brands with our sweet offerings was a perfect product for that. One more very critical insight: across the world, on Baskin, we have our ice cream cakes. Now they sell a lot, but not like other bakery cakes. Obviously, the bakery cakes, that is their main business. This is our way of indulging to celebrate with something different, which is our ice cream cakes. Across the world, from US to Japan to Korea to Southeast Asia to Middle East, cake sales went through the roof. It is not that suddenly they had more birthdays, or more anniversaries. It is just that they thought, let me get a cake at home, let me get something different at home, and let me see, and let me have a celebration, let me cut, because cutting signifies some kind of accomplishment, celebration. And they really believed in that. Rather than just buying a box of ice cream, they thought, let me get a cake. And when we found out there is not, occasionally buying cakes is very normal. This were buying for everyday moments of indulgence. They were buying cakes. And across the world, we saw that. So it was very insightful on how the consumer reacts. Even in a crisis, he needs some place to get out of it. And this, we were providing that avenue.
It's so interesting that it was the same across the world. We might have some cultural differences, but the humanity is the same across the world. And it's amazing to see that. Do you think that there would be some major priority shifts that are going to stay, not only during the crisis, but that people are going to stick to their changes? Like you were saying, that you don't want to let the crisis go to waste internally. Do you think from a consumer behavior, we will find some major shift that will stand?
I think yes and no, because one is, we don't even know when this end game is. Okay, suppose it would have ended today, then the consumer change in consumer behavior would have been only for 3-4 months. Okay, and if it is for 3-4 months, it's going to be different when suddenly tomorrow you're back to normal. There is a good chance of you going back to his old habits. Now this can go on for 12 to 18 months or more. No idea. Nobody has an idea. Assuming it goes for 12 more months. 12 more months, there's a good likelihood of consumers changing for good. How they interact with restaurants, how they interact with food places, how they consume, and what is their whole life getting adjusted. As I mentioned, that the adjusting phase is where you adjust and then you accept it as my way of living life. And then it just goes on and becomes part of a normal consumer behavior, because after a point in time, it's no longer adjusting. That is the norm, So that is likely to happen. But one thing, so it will be very difficult to say what exactly is going to happen, because you don't know when this is going to end. So the more this drags on, the more changes are likely to happen in terms of how they consume. But one thing is for sure, whether it ends in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, the consumer is becoming more, if you look at, as you select a brand, if you select a brand of any kind, big, small, anything, there is food safety and how authentic the brand is and the brand value, that the importance of that is going to go significantly up. It's not going to be like what it was before, So really, there will be, even though people all said we wanted food safe and this and, all the right terminology on that front is there. But I really see this coming up even more. We have to become more food safe and ensure that we are meeting all the food safety parameters in the consumer's mind. Whatever he defines, we have to not only meet, but exceed that by a distance to say we are a trusted brand. Because in the crisis, there is one more thing that we really saw. People prefer brands that they trust. Because they don't want to go to new brands. They say, this is not the time for me to experiment. I trust a brand. In my crisis, this is the brand that gives me safety. We have seen it across countries, across brands, that the brands with a trust level are the brands that did well. Now, how do we maintain that trust? Because his trust expectation of us is going to change. He needs a lot more from a safety point of view. So how do we live up to that? And how do we adjust that and ensure that trust and food safety is not a one-time thing? It is more table stakes. It is a given. It is oxygen. There is nothing you can do. So I think that part of it will really, really change. I think the delivery component and with less interaction with people, that will become over time will become more convenience driven. I think the world and one of the biggest things that you'll see is that convenience will take, in all forms, will take a much bigger role, and that will be the heart of everything you do. Consumer convenience, because how you can interact, how you can pay, how you can order. So I think the whole consumer interaction interface, how we consume products, everything will change over time. But I guess that is exactly where the world is going from a technology point of view. So from that extent, nothing radical is going to happen. I think everything is going to be fast forward. All this online ordering, apps, digital payment gateways are all going to be mainstream table stakes, and then comes the real battle from there on. How are you going to differentiate to really win the consumer? Because everybody will offer all of these things as standard. If you think you're going to be different, I think that is wrong, because everybody will be offering this. Because then comes the next challenge. How am I going to differentiate on this to really have brand loyalty and consumer loyalty? That's where trust comes in. Trust is very.
This was my next question. How can you build loyalty in this new world? Because as you said, there are some drivers of your loyalty that used to be drivers of your loyalty that are now a given. If they don't trust that you have a food safety standard, if they don't trust the brand, then this is gone. So how do you see the brand loyalty shifting moving forward? And what are the main essence that you think are important for people to keep to stay loyal to the brand, especially the millennials and the new generations that by nature are not necessarily very loyal?
Yeah, I mean, again, as I keep saying, when you look at the life cycle of a customer, the millennials of tomorrow today are no longer the millennials of tomorrow. So it will keep moving. Okay, so it's about how you can adapt. I would simply put saying that there will be more people becoming millennials and more people coming out of being millennials, and we have to adapt to all of that. And that's why the consumer reality and building and adapting, not only technology, so doing everything that is table stakes, okay, doing everything that is relevant, but don't try to be what you're not. The millennials and others, and it is not about millennials, but all customers, don't try to. The brand cannot be a pretentious brand. Be true to your brand ethos. Be true to your values. Be consistent, okay, on one hand. But on the other hand, be relevant, okay? Because it's not that it's consistent doesn't mean I will not change. That is not the consistency I'm talking about. Consistency in meeting consumer expectations. Consistency in delivering great quality product in a food safe manner. And consistency in understanding consumer behavior so that as they are changing, you're willing to adapt. Like the delivery thing, they are consuming different. We have to be on their path. They are not going to come to us. So however you can plot your way. So consumer insights becomes clear. You have to go on listening to what the consumer is saying more often and more frequent than what you ever did before. Because if you say that I will do research once in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, the world will change. So how often? You don't have to go and do a big, massive research always, but do small kind of studies to understand, is my consumer expectation changing? Am I being relevant? Am I offering products that mean to him? And what is happening around the world? Look at everything around the world and try to adapt quickly. So adaptation, being flexible, being nimble, at the same time offering, understanding and accepting what table stakes are, because that will keep changing from every year, 6 months, it will keep changing. But giving that basic minimum and then topping up, and goes back to the point I said before. That is where the point of differentiation comes in. So accepting what is table stakes, because what is innovation today is table stakes tomorrow, and then you have to again innovate on top of that to be relevant. So it is a continuous cycle. It will never be, as I keep saying, success is a journey, not a destination. So you have to keep evolving.
Absolutely. And this leads me to my follow-up question about franchising. Do you think that franchising, with everything that we've been talking, is franchising still a winning formula for the future, for investors, for the F&B in general, to stay consistent and relevant to the consumer?
I really think franchising is not going away anywhere. It cannot. Absolutely. Because franchising, if you see in many markets, because of franchising, that many employment in many markets is surviving because franchisees are surviving. Or if you look at the reverse, unemployment went up because franchisees shut. So franchising cannot go. The quality of what you do, and that's where the difference between both the franchisor, good franchisors, how they handle a crisis or how they manage will depend. And there are good franchisors, there are not so good, and there are bad. So there are all kind of franchisors.
What is a good franchisor for you?
Yeah. Everything. You should ask the franchisees. You should ask the franchisees whether somebody is good or not. And I'll come to that, okay? But even the franchisees, there are great franchisees, good franchisees, and not so good franchisees. So ultimately, the difference is between when good and good meet, it is great, or when good and great meet is also great. But when good franchisor and a bad franchisee, or a bad franchisor and a good franchisee, any of that combination, both have to have a common goal. We have a philosophy which is driven very clearly. Your success is our success, So it is not in isolation. Understanding that franchisor, franchisee work together for a common goal, for a common good. And then when I keep saying we are in the business of managing relationships. Managing the relationship is more important, because if you manage a relationship, you manage the business, you manage the brand, you manage the customer, you take care of everything. So which effectively means your success is our success, means we cannot win without you winning. So to me, a good franchisor is somebody who keeps the franchisee's profit in mind first, because then a franchisor's profit is assured. But if the franchisee is not winning and the franchisor alone is winning, it's a short-term thing. And we are not here to play short-term games here. It is the philosophy of saying your success is our success is key. And to me, that is what differentiates a good franchisor from a franchisee.
John, thank you so much. It's been so insightful. Our conversation is getting to an end, and I want to thank you for being so open, so insightful. I'm sure everyone that's going to be watching this video is going to learn something and can do something to adapt to these very challenging words. So to close, do you have any final messages to whoever is watching us on how to adapt and survive in this world? And then we have a surprise for whoever is watching as well that we're going to be talking about.
I would only say that in a crisis, communication is key. Just don't stay aloof. Keep interacting. There is nothing called over communication. Even if there is, please do it, because consumers in a crisis, they don't know what's happening. Everybody likes to hear, whether it's the employees, whether it's franchisees and the consumers, on how we are going to take care of them and how we are going to adapt. Secondly, so communication is key. Secondly, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Don't be a victim, because you can, have a sob story about yourself and do nothing about it. Look into the future. Look at this as a great opportunity to reset your business, to make the changes needed. If you have a strategy and a long-term plan, take this kind of default becomes a break here. Reassess your strategy, reassess your plans. Look at whether you're making investments in the right direction, and go and reset. This is a year of reset by default, whether anyone likes it or not. This crisis that we made this a reset year. So reset and go off and look back and learn from the past, but don't make the same mistakes, and have a new vision, have a new way of driving business, have a new way of consumer engagement, have a new way of treating and engaging with your people, your own staff on how they're going to work. Maybe it's technology driven. Have new ways of doing things, but be open to change. This has forced you to change. Be ready for more changes along the way. Let this change teach us that being flexible and nimble and lean and mean and quick in decision making will get us to the other side in a much, much better manner.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really, it's been so interesting to have you. So for whoever is living in Lebanon, and my idea was for Lebanon first, and then John said, no, let's do it for the rest of the Gulf. So whoever is watching this video, you just drop a comment in the, below this particular video, and we'll send you a QR code to get a donut and a coffee for free at Dunkin, as long as you do it before end of July. So the details are going to be in the description below. Just drop a comment, and it will be really our pleasure to offer you a donut and a coffee to put some sweets into your life and into this very challenging world. So thank you so much, John. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight. And I hope to see you very soon in person, not only on Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. Pleasure, as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.